It started on a cold Thursday morning inside a private school so expensive, even the air felt richer. The floors were polished marble, the walls were lined with student art that cost more to frame than some families made in a month. And yet, among all that shine, there was a man no one noticed. His name was Mr. Henry, the janitor. Every morning at 6 a.m., before the students and teachers filled the hallways, he'd push his squeaky cart down the east wing. Same faded blue uniform, same quiet steps, same kind eyes under a cap that had lost its color years ago. He wasn't the kind of man who demanded attention. But that day, something happened that made the entire school freeze. The music room's grand piano, the one imported from Italy and worth more than most cars, had gone silent. The night before, the senior music students had been practicing for a big charity concert. Somewhere between the last note and the janitor's shift, something broke. When the music teacher, Ms. Clara Williams, pressed the keys that morning, half the piano was dead. "Who did this?" she snapped, clutching her coffee cup. "The concert is in 2 days." She stormed into the hallway, saw Henry mopping near the lockers, and immediately turned her frustration toward him. "Mr. Henry, did you move the piano last night?" He looked up, startled. "Ma'am, I don't touch the instruments. I just clean the floors." "Well, someone did," she said sharply. "The maintenance guys aren't here till Monday." "Great. Just great." Students began gathering near the doorway, whispering. To them, Henry was invisible most days, but when something went wrong, he was the first they blamed. He didn't defend himself. He just nodded slowly and said, "If it's all right with you, ma'am, I could take a look at it." "You?" She laughed a little. "It's a concert grand, not a broom handle. Leave it alone, please." But something in Henry's calmness made one of the students, Olivia, hesitate. She'd seen him before, during her late-night choir practices. Once, she'd heard him humming, softly, beautifully, while polishing the floors. It had stuck in her mind. "Ms. Williams," Olivia said quietly, "maybe let him check? What's the harm?" Clara sighed. "Fine. 10 minutes. Then I'm calling a professional." Henry nodded once, wiped his hands on his uniform, and stepped into the music room. He didn't rush. He didn't look nervous. He sat down on the bench like someone greeting an old friend. His fingers hovered over the keys, almost reverently. Then he pressed one. It made a dull, broken thud. He listened, not just to the sound, but to the silence that followed. His expression changed, just slightly, like a memory flickering across his face. He lifted the lid, gently touched the hammers, the strings, the pedals. The room went quiet except for the small sounds of him working. Students leaned in through the doorway. "What's he doing?" one whispered. "I don't know," another replied. "Looks like he actually knows what he's doing." Within minutes, Henry had unscrewed the front panel with a pocket tool from his belt. He adjusted a few felt pads, realigned a string, tightened a screw so delicately it looked like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Then, after about 15 minutes, he sat back down. He played a note. Then another. And another. This time, the piano sang. Not just fixed, it sounded fuller, cleaner. The tone was richer than before. Everyone stared. Ms. Williams froze. "How did you?" Henry smiled softly. "Sometimes things just need a gentle hand." But Olivia couldn't stop staring at him. The way his fingers moved, it wasn't random. He knew this instrument. She could tell from the way he touched it, the way his eyes softened as the music filled the room. When he started playing a small melody, slow, haunting, but breathtakingly beautiful, the whispers stopped entirely. It wasn't a song they recognized. It felt personal. Something born out of memory, not sheet music. By the time he lifted his hands, even Ms. Williams had tears in her eyes. "That was incredible," she whispered. "What piece was that?" Henry blinked slowly, hesitating. "Just something I used to play." And before anyone could ask more, he stood, closed the lid, and went back to his cart as if nothing had happened. The room was silent. Students exchanged glances. The janitor had just fixed and played a grand piano like a professional. No, like a master. But he acted like it was nothing. Later that day, the story spread around the entire school. By lunch, everyone was talking about it, The janitor fixed the piano. No, not just fixed it, played it like a concert pianist. Who even is that guy? Someone even recorded a short clip of him playing. It made its way to the school's social media page, captioned, "When your janitor plays better than your music teacher." The post got hundreds of likes in hours. Ms. Williams, embarrassed but curious, decided to dig a little deeper. That afternoon, she went to the front office and asked the secretary, "Can I see Mr. Henry's file?" The woman frowned. "Why? He's been here forever. 20 years, maybe more. I just want to know a bit about him." But when she pulled up the record, there wasn't much. Just a short note: name, Henry Thompson, position, custodian hired, 2005, previous experience, blank, nothing else. It was strange. Meanwhile, Henry was out by the courtyard, sitting alone on a bench, eating his sandwich. Same as always. Except now, people looked at him differently. When a group of students walked past, they didn't ignore him. They whispered. One of them smiled awkwardly. Olivia approached him. "Mr. Henry," she said softly. He looked up. "Yes, ma'am." She laughed at the way he said, "ma'am," to a 17-year-old. "That song you played earlier, was it yours?" He smiled faintly. "A long time ago, maybe." "You should play at the concert," she said suddenly. "We're short a performer. You'd be amazing." "Oh no," he chuckled. "That's your stage, not mine." "But music's meant to be shared, not shown off," he interrupted gently. "Besides, I'm just the man who cleans the floors." She wanted to argue, but something in his tone made her stop. It wasn't false humility. It was sadness. Later that evening, when most of the staff had gone home, Olivia passed by the music room again. She stopped when she heard the faint sound of the piano. The door was slightly open. Inside, Henry sat at the piano again, playing quietly to the empty room. This time, it wasn't a sad tune, it was something beautiful and complex. His hands moved with precision, emotion, grace. It was the kind of playing that came from a life lived in music. Olivia stood there frozen, heart pounding. She didn't want to interrupt, but she couldn't walk away. When he finished, he noticed her reflection in the shiny lid. "You like it?" he asked softly. "It's beautiful," she whispered. That's not just practice. That's mastery." He chuckled. "Well, when you've had as many years as I have, you learn a few things." "Who taught you?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then quietly he said, "A man who believed music could save people." And maybe he was right. Before she could ask more, he packed up and left. That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. She went online, searching Henry Thompson piano, out of curiosity. At first, nothing. Then, on the 4th page of Google, a link appeared. Henry Thompson, classical pianist, disappears after tragic accident, 1999. Her eyes widened. She clicked it. An old newspaper article loaded. Renowned pianist Henry Thompson, once called the prodigy of New Orleans, vanished from the music scene after a fatal car crash took his wife and son. Authorities reported he sold his belongings and left the city. His whereabouts remain unknown. Olivia's hand trembled. She clicked the picture. It was him. Younger, without gray hair, but the same eyes. The janitor. Her janitor. The man who fixed the piano. And now she realized, he hadn't just repaired a broken instrument. He'd repaired a part of himself that had been silent for 20 years. The day after Henry fixed the piano, something changed in the air. The school felt heavier somehow, like the walls themselves were holding on to the sound of that melody he'd played. Students whispered about him between classes, some in disbelief, others in awe. And yet, Henry himself carried on as if nothing had happened. He mopped the hallways, emptied the trash cans, wiped fingerprints off glass doors, same rhythm, same silence. But inside him, something stirred. A door he thought he'd locked decades ago was quietly creaking open. By mid-morning, the video of his impromptu piano performance had spread beyond the school's private group chat. It reached parents, alumni, even a few musicians in town. The clip was only 40 seconds long, but in those seconds, Henry's hands moved with grace that words couldn't capture. That afternoon, as he was changing a light bulb in the cafeteria, Principal Dalton approached him. "Henry," he said, adjusting his tie awkwardly, "I've been hearing quite the buzz about you." Henry climbed down from the ladder slowly, wiping his hands on his uniform. "Just did what needed to be done, sir." Dalton chuckled. "Well, apparently what needed to be done has half the school talking about you. Tell me, where did you learn to play like that?" Henry smiled faintly. "Long time ago." "I see," Dalton said. "Listen, we've got the charity concert coming up this weekend. The piano's fixed thanks to you. How would you feel about performing a short piece? Nothing big, just a few minutes to start the show." Henry froze. The sound of that word, performing, sent a small chill through him. "Sir, I appreciate the thought," he said carefully, "but I'm no performer." "Not anymore." Dalton frowned slightly. "I understand if you're shy, but I think people would love to see you play again. It's for a good cause." Henry shook his head, polite but firm. "I'm better off behind the brooms, sir." Dalton studied him a moment longer, sensing there was more behind that calm exterior. "All right," he said finally, "if you change your mind, the stage is yours." When the principal left, Henry stood there a moment longer, staring at the empty cafeteria tables. He could still feel the piano keys under his fingers from yesterday, the warmth, the vibration, the memory of something he used to love. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in his small apartment 2 blocks from the school, surrounded by silence. The only decoration on the walls was a single framed photo, a young woman and a small boy smiling beside a grand piano. His wife, Grace, and their son, Eli. He picked up the frame, brushed the dust off, and whispered, "You'd laugh if you saw me now, wouldn't you, Gracie?" Her smile in the photo seemed to say she would. He set it down, looked at his calloused hands, and let the memories wash over him. The smell of stage curtains, the applause, the endless rehearsals, and then the night it all ended. The night that broke him. A storm. A phone call. A drunk driver. A silence that followed him for 25 years. The next day, he returned to school, keeping his head down, but the whispers followed him everywhere. Some students approached to ask questions. Others just looked at him differently now, not as the janitor, but as something else. One afternoon, Olivia caught him in the hallway again. "Mr. Henry," she said, walking beside him as he pushed his cart. He smiled. "Afternoon, Miss Olivia. You really won't play at the concert?" He chuckled softly. "You don't give up, do you?" "Not when something feels right," she said. "Everyone's talking about how your playing made them feel. That's rare. You have to do it." Henry sighed. "I've had my time on stage, sweetheart." She looked up at him seriously. "Maybe the world still needs your song." Those words stuck. That night, as he was locking up, he passed by the music room again. The moonlight streamed through the window, falling across the black piano like a spotlight. He stopped. Something inside him whispered, "Just one more time." He walked in, sat down, and touched the keys. For a few seconds, he just breathed. Then, almost without meaning to, he began to play. The sound was soft at first, hesitant, like an old friend remembering how to speak. Then it grew, spreading through the empty halls, pure and raw. Unknown to him, Miss Williams had come back for her purse. She froze in the hallway when she heard the music. Slowly, she peeked inside the room. Henry was lost in the sound, his shoulders swaying, eyes closed, a tear glistening on his cheek as his fingers danced across the keys. It wasn't classical this time. It was something deeply personal, a melody that sounded like grief and hope woven together. When he stopped, Miss Williams stepped inside quietly. "That was extraordinary," she whispered. Henry looked up, startled. "Didn't mean to disturb." "You didn't," she said softly. "You moved me." He smiled faintly. "Just needed to let something out, I suppose." She hesitated, then said, "Mr. Dalton wants you to play at the concert. Please say yes. You belong on that stage." Henry's eyes drifted to the piano again. "That stage took everything from me once. Maybe this time it'll give something back," she replied. He looked at her, thoughtful. "What would I even play? Anything that comes from your heart." That night, Henry went home and sat by the window for hours. The city lights shimmered through the glass, and somewhere far away, he could hear faint music from a bar down the street. He whispered to himself, "For you, Grace. Just one more song." The next morning, when Olivia walked into the music room, she found him polishing the piano keys. "Does this mean you'll play?" she asked. He smiled without answering. But the sparkle in his eyes said it all. Concert day. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Parents filled the seats, the local news crew had cameras ready, and the stage lights bathed the grand piano in golden glow. Backstage, Henry sat on a folding chair, smoothing out his old black suit. It was the same one he wore at his final concert years ago. He'd kept it tucked away all this time. Olivia found him there, nervous and fidgeting. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Haven't felt stage lights in a long time." She smiled. "Then they're about to feel lucky again." When his turn came, Principal Dalton walked up to the microphone. "Our next performer needs no introduction, but he deserves one. For 20 years, he's kept this school shining. Tonight, he's about to shine himself. Please welcome Mr. Henry Thompson." The audience clapped politely, most of them unaware of what was coming. Henry walked onto the stage slowly, his steps measured. The moment he sat at the piano bench, a hush fell over the room. He placed his hands on the keys and closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, the past and present collided inside him, the memory of Grace and Eli, the sound of applause, the silence that followed their loss. Then he began to play. The melody was soft at first, fragile as a whisper. But soon it swelled, blooming into something rich and luminous. The notes carried stories, of love, of grief, of letting go. Every chord trembled with emotion. The audience leaned forward, mesmerized. Olivia watched from the side of the stage, eyes wide and wet. She could feel what he was saying without words. This was a man pouring out the years he'd kept buried. When the final note faded, the room stayed silent for a full 10 seconds. Then the applause came, slow at first, then thunderous. People rose to their feet. Some cried. Even the principal wiped a tear. Henry stood, bowed once, and smiled softly. For the first time in decades, he felt something he thought he'd lost: peace. When he walked off stage, Olivia threw her arms around him. "You did it," she whispered. "You gave them something they'll never forget." He smiled. "No, sweetheart. They gave me something I forgot I still had." When the concert ended that night, people lingered long after the final applause. It wasn't the students' performances they were talking about, it was him. The janitor who played like a man reborn. Parents came up to Ms. Williams, asking, "Who is he? Where did he learn to play like that?" Even Principal Dalton, still blinking away tears, could only shake his head and whisper, "I don't know." Henry, however, slipped quietly out the side door before the cameras found him. He walked home under the soft yellow glow of the streetlights, his old shoes scraping against the pavement. He could still hear the echo of the music in his head, not from the concert, but from years ago. That melody had been the last thing he ever played for his wife and son. He had never thought he'd finish it. When he got home, he sat down on his worn-out couch, hands still trembling slightly. On the small table by his side was that old framed photo again, Grace and Eli smiling beside a piano. He whispered, "They heard me tonight. I know they did." And for the first time in decades, he slept peacefully. The next morning, he arrived at the school before sunrise like always. But something was off. As he entered, he noticed the front desk phone ringing non-stop. The secretary looked flustered. "Henry," she said, waving him over. "You've made the front page." He frowned. Front page of what? She turned her computer screen toward him. There it was. A headline that read, "Local Janitor Revealed to be Former Concert Pianist Henry Thompson, a Lost Legend Returns." Below was an old black-and-white photo of him, younger, sharper, in a tuxedo, performing under chandeliers. Henry froze. His heart thudded in his chest. He hadn't heard that name spoken in public in more than 20 years. The article was detailed, too detailed. It spoke of the tragedy that took his family, the mysterious disappearance, the rumors that he'd given up music forever. Olivia had shared a short clip from the concert, and it went viral overnight. Reporters were calling the school non-stop. By the time the first class bell rang, half the staff already knew. Students peeked through the hallway windows at him as he walked by, whispering his real name like it was some kind of secret spell. Ms. Williams found him by the lockers, looking troubled. "Henry, are you okay?" He sighed softly. "Didn't plan for all this attention." "You deserve it," she said. "People are remembering you for what you are, a gift." He smiled faintly. "I was a man who lost everything. That's what I was. But look what you gave everyone last night," she said. "You showed them what it means to rise again." Before he could respond, Principal Dalton came rushing over, excitement in his voice. "Henry, you won't believe this. The New Orleans Symphony called this morning. They want you to perform with them next month. And there's a TV interview request too." Henry chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I appreciate it, sir, but I'm done with stages." Dalton blinked. "But, Henry, this could change your life." He looked around the hallway, at the shining floors, the lockers, the laughter of kids passing by. "My life's already changed, sir. I just didn't need a spotlight to notice it." The next few days, the school turned into a strange mix of fame and quiet. Some students asked for his autograph. Others just watched him mop floors with a kind of reverence, unsure whether to treat him like a celebrity or the same man who helped them pick up spilled paint last week. Henry didn't act any different. If anything, he seemed lighter. The same soft smile, the same gentle greetings. But something inside him had healed. He started spending his lunch breaks in the music room, teaching small groups of students little techniques, how to hold a note, how to play with feeling. "Music isn't about perfection," he'd say, tapping the piano lightly. "It's about truth. Every note is a story. If you don't mean it, people will hear the lie." The students loved him. Word spread, and soon the music room was always full. Olivia started recording those sessions, uploading them online. She titled the series, "Lessons from Mr. Henry." Within a week, millions had watched. People weren't just moved by his skill, they were moved by his humility. The comment section overflowed, "He's what music is supposed to be." "I cried hearing him talk about pain like that." "The janitor has more wisdom than half the world." But fame has a way of finding people, even those who try to hide. One afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up outside the school. A woman stepped out, dressed in a tailored coat, holding a camera bag. "Excuse me," she asked a student. "Is there a Mr. Henry Thompson here?" The student pointed toward the hallway. "Music room." "Like always." She entered quietly. Inside, Henry was seated beside Olivia, showing her how to play a difficult arpeggio. When he noticed her, his fingers paused mid-air. "Mr. Thompson," she said softly, "my name is Rachel Monroe, from the Times-Chronicle. I'd love to tell your story." He sighed. "I think enough stories have been told about me." She smiled gently. "Maybe. But not by you." He studied her for a long moment, then said, "All right, Miss Monroe. You get 1 cup of coffee." They sat in the teacher's lounge, sunlight streaming in through dusty blinds. "Everyone's talking about your return," Rachel said. "You disappeared from the stage at your prime. No one knew why." Henry looked down at his hands. "Because sometimes life decides the song's over before you do." "What made you play again?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "A broken piano." She blinked. "That's it." He nodded. "Sometimes, you fix something else, and realize it's been fixing you back." Rachel didn't say anything for a while. She could see the weight behind his words. Before she left, she asked, "Will you play again, publicly?" He chuckled. "I play every day. I just don't sell tickets anymore." Weeks passed. The media noise slowly faded, but the impact he left did not. The students who once scrolled through their phones during music class now practiced for hours. The school's music program doubled in size. Donations poured in for new instruments. The old janitor had changed the heart of the school, not by teaching theory, but by showing what music really meant. Then, one rainy afternoon, Henry didn't show up. At first, people assumed he was sick. But when he missed a second day, Ms. Williams drove to his apartment to check. She found the door unlocked. Inside, The lights were off. On the table sat a sealed envelope addressed to "My friends at St. Augustine Academy." Inside was a simple handwritten letter. "Dear friends, I want to thank you for reminding me that music never truly dies. It just waits for us to listen again. You gave me back a part of myself I thought I'd buried forever. I've decided to travel south, back to New Orleans, to visit a few old places. Don't worry, I'm fine. But this next melody, I think it's one I need to play alone. Take care of that piano. It's got more stories to tell." Henry, a small pendant lay beside the letter, a tiny golden treble clef. Months later, the school held another concert, this time in his honor. They called it the Janitor's Melody. Olivia took the stage last. She placed the pendant on the piano and began to play the same song Henry had performed that night, the song he'd written for his family. Halfway through, she stopped for a second, looked out into the crowd, and smiled. "I think he's still listening," she whispered, then finished the piece with trembling hands and tearful eyes. When the final note faded, sunlight streamed through the auditorium windows, warm, golden, almost like a blessing. No one clapped at first. They just sat there, letting the silence speak. And somewhere, maybe in New Orleans, maybe beyond what anyone could see, a man smiled quietly, hearing his song carry on through another's hands. Because some melodies never end. They just find new players. And that's how everyone realized who he really was. Not just a janitor, not just a pianist, but a man who turned pain into purpose and silence into music. If this story touched your soul, leave a heart and tell us what part moved you the most. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Residential Stories, where every story reminds you, greatness often hides in plain sight.